It's time to get into a banking book report with our brother, Robert Kiyosaki. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Cash Compound Podcast. I'm here with Jesse. What's up, Jesse?
What's up, everybody?
We're going to get right into it. We want to talk this week on this episode. We're cracking the code to cash flow. We are talking about book number 2 from Robert Kiyosaki. Everybody out there knows book number 1, Jesse. But
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Do they know this one?
Maybe not. We're hoping to have a good discussion whether you have read it or have not read it.
The book is the Cashflow Quadrant. And those of us who are probably savvy with what's going on and what we normally do have probably heard of this diagram and this explanation of how people earn dollars and in what quadrant and what methods are used to get their money coming toward them. But some people out there, I think, just get a little bit of taste from the baby food on Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and they never make it to this book. I know that there was a big gap of time between my first reading, 2006, 2007. It was around the holidays, I even think, of Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
You were way ahead of me.
But this book didn't come till a decade later.
Okay. I probably read Rich Dad, Poor Dad in 2015. Mm-hmm. But even so, I checked the inside of this one. I read it in 2017. So there was still some time.
Oh, hold on. What are we saying? We've got in the studio here, we do have Jesse's hard copy. I've got to be honest. Jesse gets on to me sometimes. I'm an audiobook type of guy. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad before audiobook. However, This one, 2 or 3 times, it's only been audio. I've never seen the pages. And you, what are you writing here in the front?
I always, if I have a book now, I didn't used to always do this. I just used to read for fun. But when I'm doing personal growth and development, but for all my books now altogether, I write the date that I buy it. Then I write the date that I
finally finished it or started it?
Finished it when I finished it. And now I've evolved.
Like, are you allowed to not finish books? I think I've started to allow myself.
You're going to make me admit the one time that I didn't finish one book in my life?
If it wasn't going to serve me in the way that I needed or thought, there's only been a very few, because I know what I'm looking for most of the time, or I recognize the authors, or I'm recommended a book, right, from a trusted friend. But there's 1 or 2 I'm like, it's a waste to finish this just to finish it.
I hear you. I do finish stuff that I start. So there has been one exception, Moby Dick, that 1,000-page monstrosity.
But that was not personal growth.
No, it wasn't.
Financial development.
I'm just saying that was the one time. But nowadays, and I like writing my takeaways.
Yeah,
it was the last thing I was going to say about writing on the inside. I like to write my takeaways at that time because you and I were talking before we hit record. Some books we want to revisit, and I like seeing where my thinking was 5 years ago versus maybe what I get out of a book now if I reread it.
Right. Hey, that's why we're going to church every week. The book didn't change much, but we may have changed between these last Sabbaths.
Right.
You like that?
Yep.
All right. There we go. Baptist bros talking to you again. Okay, now, Jesse, let's kind of get into it. I think you've got some of the meat of what stands out to you. A lot of people probably out there don't know the quadrants, so maybe we start there. And can you paint us this picture over a podcast?
For sure. So just imagine 4 quadrants, okay, and it's pictured on the front of the book. And each of those quadrants, so 4 quadrants represented with E for employee, S for small business or specialist or self-employed individuals. And then on the right-hand side at the top is going to be B for big business. So 500 plus employees kind of business. And in the bottom right is I for investor. So full-time investor. And some folks are in one of those quadrants. Some folks are in more than one of those quadrants, perhaps. And Robert Kiyosaki does say it's important to know which quadrant you're at. So I think that's the best first question for our audience to ask themselves is, which one of those quadrants am I in?
And at the same time, we need to realize that it's not better or worse of where you might be or how your money is earned and how it comes to you. And second, to help satisfy many of you who are not sure what we're talking about yet, maybe you're new to this entire financial education type of thought process, no matter where you're starting from, 95% of the Western world, American adults, they're on the left side of this quadrant, 95%. So once again, top left corner is going to be E. That is employee. You got a job. Okay. Bottom left, to make up the rest of the 95%, is that self-employed or specialist type of person. 95% of people are over there. So, Jesse, maybe you could even give us a second to tell us why that is. Why are there 95% of people over there? Why is 5% on the other side? And just explain that a little bit.
Lots of reasons. One route that we could say is it's the easiest. It's the easiest. It's the simplest. And then two, for folks that pay attention to history, is that we're educated more towards that side for one thing.
I think it's really simple. Since the Industrial Revolution has come through mid-1800s, late 1800s through the 20th century plus. Yeah, we were trained, we're thought of, and there's plenty of spots for us to be hired by someone else's big business, or a few people got into an investment opportunity and they needed workers.
Yep.
So it started out on the assembly line and it moved to middle management when you're white collar, working a 9 to 5, as we would say now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Big transition from folks being entrepreneurs, even last names. So-and-so Miller. They were a Miller.
Yeah,
that was the
Smith,
family business.
Carpenter, right?
For
These
sure.
are last names, right?
For sure. It was just much simpler, and that was just the gear after the Industrial Revolution, like you're saying, to where we were funneled towards in general.
Okay, we're not giving you judgment yet. We'll give you judgment later when we meet you in person. However, we're just trying to talk through the book. Move us on to the next point here, stuff that stands out to you about this man's thought process and explaining this to us.
Right. So we all are where we are in the cash flow quadrants, okay? I started out as an employee. I transitioned to the S quadrant. I'm eyeballing the B and the I, at least as far as learning goes, even when I'm over there after being exposed to this book. But here's a big distinction. So if you just go right down the middle from the top to the bottom in Robert's cash flow quadrants. So on the left-hand side, those employees and self-employed. On the right-hand side, big business and investors. You see a real clear distinction where, and this is big, there are only two ways to earn. Okay, so there are only two ways to earn in general, macro level. People at work or money at work. So you see the people at work on the left-hand side of his quadrants.
Gotcha,
employees,
right.
Self-employed, and you see money more at work. So people's money making more money for them on the right-hand side with investing in big business. That's a big distinction.
It was an eye-opening thing to me several years ago when I first went through this book, man, because when I was already in this self-employed entrepreneurial specialist space. So I'd already left my corporate job environment. I only had one, but I left it, and it wasn't even that corporate. But it wasn't for me, couldn't do it. And what I thought was that S was the be-all, end-all. I thought that's as far as it went. I didn't even understand about the right-hand side of this thing. Big business, or as Kiyosaki says, a bunch, which I really like. And it's probably because of the environments of what we do here and how we have been in business is business systems. He says the business system so often. I love that, actually. So Robert, Bobby, if you're out there listening to our podcast, I love that it's not just a big business with 500 employees. It could be a business system, because actually I think I was exposed to this in the realm and in the thought process in my world of network marketing, which is a business system where a lot of people are still independent. And you don't own everyone's time or effort, but you're leveraging them. And so it's still a business system. So I think that was helpful for me to understand. And even what we do here, helping people crack the code to cash flow, helping them get started with this idea of infinite banking that we do, it's more of a business system. You don't need 500 employees. We'll never have that. We don't want that. But we still can have 500 employee type money being made potentially if you have a good system being built.
Yep, those two key words.
Yeah, businesses. I really like that. So on the left-hand side, I just want to say, Jesse, that, man, I was out there hustling in the grind, and I thought that's as best as I could do. I did not understand leveraging other people's time, OPT, which he talks about, or other people's money did not come until way later. This was eye-opening for me because I just thought I had to go be great as a specialist. But in that sense, I just owned my job rather than having a job someone else provided a structure for me to work in. I just own my own job.
Right. Well, having started from the employee quadrant myself, having been a educator and then having been in law enforcement, I made the step into the S quadrant where you do realize a heightened sense of control. For example, right? Like you could control your hours, but then again, they are your hours. You still have to be
your
there.
hours. Oh man! All of a sudden, I wasn't working 9 to 5. I was working 5 to 9. Right, trying to keep it floating.
So there's give and take in all these quadrants. Again, that's where we're not passing judgment. We're just describing what that looks like, and we're going to make some beautiful connections here in a second. But the transition could be hinged, I think, greatly on those two words of having systems in place to leveling up wherever you're at. Systems and then leverage. Those are two key words for sure.
Love it, man. All right, keep going. What's your next point?
So when I was going back through the book from 2017, like I said, to now, I was struck by something that I'd heard now since first having read it, and it was when Robert Kiyosaki asks in his book, which quadrant are you in? I've heard from Jocko Willink's podcast, him ask folks, what's the most important thing to know on a battlefield? Because he talks in the context of combat and history and things like that.
So with that in mind, before you get to
all right, let's go.
We got to go to that segment out there. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to our quote of the week.
Jocko Willink says, the most important thing to know on the battlefield is where you are.
Okay, now the reason that's important is because apparently he asks people this. I know who it is. I follow him on Instagram, but I don't ever listen to the podcast. He asks people what is the most important thing to know, and they consistently get it wrong or they say the wrong thing.
Yeah, he says very often that folks will say, well, I need to know where the enemy is because that's the mission, right? Is take care of
where
whatever
my weapons are.
But he says that the most important thing to know is where you are. I mean, what if you're across enemy lines and don't know it? I mean, you could just be in a world of hurt by not knowing first and foremost where you are. And with that being, the title of one of these chapters is and it's something that you should spend some time on and realize, okay, is this for me? Is this my spot? And I'm just going to make this the best that it can be, because you could level up in your quadrant. Level up. Of course. You can transition quadrants like we have, or maybe we'll continue to do over time. Right?
100%. I think that it's helpful to know, once again, that you may be in multiple quadrants. Mm-hmm. Where does most of your money come from? There are most people out there who do have a job. Someone else has provided a business system or invested in that opportunity, and they have a job. And over there, some of those benefits, of course, are like maybe security, because you don't have to bear the risk of building the system, or you didn't have to spend the time building the system, and you fit in and you can kind of work in a semi-specialist environment in someone else's business system. And so there's a lot of opportunity over there. Obviously, when you have the control, as we move into that S quadrant, now you have more authority over your time. You have more authority over who you might be working with or sitting next to, because it's maybe not a cube farm anymore. But over there, your time must be leveraged to make money. You don't have to work, and you're going to have to hustle. One other thing, Jesse, that I want to comment on, though, is that the taxes are crazy on the left side of the quadrant.
Good point.
Where 95% of the people are. Speak to that for a second.
Well, it's interesting because folks like Robert Kiyosaki can be accosted by so many people in the realm of taxes, and all they will say back, of course, is that, hey, we didn't make the rules, but we are learning the rules, and we're playing by the rules. And we would also encourage people to know where you can find tax advantages. We think we've got a pretty good handle on where you can find a lot of tax advantages by the types of assets. I mean, if I keep going with Robert Kiyosaki's language, the type of appreciating assets that you can own, no matter which one of these quadrants you're in, right? You could own one of the policies that we talk about. Those properly structured whole life policies with mutual companies give you guaranteed access to growing compounding capital in your lifetime. And then whoever you have as a beneficiary, they're going to receive a tax-free windfall.
Love it. Windfall, if you don't know, because I'll be honest, I don't think for several years I kind of understood where that word fit into our financial plan and what we were doing here. Windfall, for those of you who are starting at the place where I was starting, which was the beginning, means a bunch of money coming to you, a windfall. So that can happen in a bonus, that can happen in a death benefit. Remember, those dollars are tax-free. That's what we mean by windfall. Maybe we should have had a word of the week segment as well. Windfall. But anyway,
it's a good point.
What does it take then for us to move to the right side of the quadrant? Lots of people are on the left side. Most people start on the left side. Most people are taught to be on the left side. Is the right side better? What's going on over there? We just mentioned that the tax advantages and opportunities are different. But should we move? How do we move?
Should you move? You decide that. The one question, which I think is the best, is you figure out the why, but the how. Let me address the how to that question. Okay, is in Robert Kiyosaki's dedication. His dedication in the book reads, "This book is dedicated to those who are willing to pay the price." Now that. I think you could go all the way back to the point of, well, in 2016, I paid a certain amount of money for this book. And then I spent a certain amount of time reading this book. You know what I'm saying? So are most of the employees that you know, or even those small business owners that are just super, super busy, are they dedicating any of their money or their time to financial education? Okay. So I think that's what this
that's
book,
what it takes to get over there.
I think so.
Okay, so what type of education do we need to know or understand, or why would we want to move over there? Or how can let's say that there's an opportunity to be more financially impactful on the right side. You can make more money. You can potentially have less ties with the government over there. The money is working on the right side rather than you and your time and effort. So I think we might want to consider moving over there. What I'm saying? For me, that seems like a no-brainer. At least a portion of my dollars should be working over there because that's where the money's working. So how do we get that money over there? Keep going. You give us a how. Give us a little more how.
Right. Well, I would say we all have to start at the start. And I started as an employee, made some transitions, but the permeating thought here for me, knowing all that I know now, having read this book, having read R. Nelson Nash's book, Becoming Your Own Banker, I knew I wanted to become my own banker. Coincidentally, Robert Kiyosaki has a chapter in his book called Be the Bank.
Be the Bank.
Oh, my goodness.
All right.
So no matter which of these quadrants you're in, and if you're wanting to get money at work instead of just you being at work, is start becoming your own banker. Figure out a good starting point for you to capitalize an asset where your money will be compounding. It'll have these tax advantages. It'll have this growth. It'll have this access. You're not locking it away where you can't get to it and use it for opportunities that do arise in business or in investing. So I'm not telling you what to invest in, but I would point out that from the get-go, you could be the banker in that investing.
Love it. Okay, so we move to the right side of the quadrant here. I want to talk a little bit about these pieces. That big business idea is when a system is in place that works without you. Lots of people do have these systems, but let's think major, and let's even tie it to the infinite banking concept, the grocery store.
Okay.
Let's go to Walmart. The Walton family, richest family for the last 40 years in our country, as the 6, 7, 8 of them, now down to, I think, about 5, who are left in that original nuclear family.
They've been doing all right.
They've been doing just fine. Something like $40 billion each, is what they're worth because they have a business system that they control. Nowadays, of course, they probably chair a couple of the boards and seats and they get paid those dividends because they are owners. However, Dad, Sam Walton, was running the business, but eventually he had a business system. Lots of people working at his big warehouse stores, and they were funneling profits toward him because he controlled the asset. That asset was making him a bunch of money, but he didn't have to stock the shelves, and he didn't have to actually drive the trucks around and deliver the stuff to the back of the stores. So that's what we mean by business system. He created tons and tons of trucking, logistics, and checkout point-of-sale systems that worked everywhere, right? Think of the same thing in terms of a franchise. We're talking about our favorites. Of course, everyone kind of knows the McDonald's story, and they've done lots of videos around that and movies and books these days. And Chick-fil-A, something that's really thriving in most parts of the country right now. Same thing. It's a business system. It's the same every time. The Lord's Chicken. If it was the Lord's Chicken, it would be available on Sunday, all right? So this is not the Lord's Chicken. This is the other 6 days of the week. All right, but the Cathy family, right? They control as far as I know, most of that system, and
Right.
they get the profits because it's a business system. So the entrepreneurial myth, plug for another book, is another way to understand how to build a business system. And that means that other people's time and other people's money can be leveraged in your business system to help you make money without being leveraged yourself. Jesse has taken down something.
I mean, you mentioned a book that I've not read before.
The E-Myth? What?
I'm always
E-Myth-
adding to my list.
E-Myth Revisited, everybody. Go for that second version or whatever it is. All right, Jesse, what do you say to that on the right side of the quadrant and moving forward in the book?
So, again, everybody's got to start where they're at. And obviously, they've probably been exposed to the idea of our save and spend system, becoming your own banker, Kiyosaki's work. So, for those that are looking to advance in that area of, okay, well, I am committing to some level of financial education. I'm going to buy the books. I'm going to listen to the books. I'm going to, put some time and money into educating myself, realizing where I'm at, and figuring out what it is that I do want to do. From day one, you're already somewhere and you're already banking. I think I'm certain that the concept of banking permeates these quadrants. So if today you're an employee, you are financing your household needs with somebody. I'm saying you could own that business. And Nelson, in his book, Becoming Your Own Banker, does say that when you open up a policy, you need to look at it as a business. Treat it like a business, okay? So that's how an employee can get into a business.
There you go.
It's pretty cool.
All right.
So self-employed, same thing. You're financing your tools, your overhead, your payroll, all the things that's in what you do. You're financing that. What if you could own that yourself? What if you could benefit from that, be profitable from that business, that space as well, on top of what you're already doing? Same thing for business and investing. If you're doing investing, you're a full-time investor. Aren't all of your investments financed? They are. Either you're using bank money or somebody else's money, or you're amassing capital somewhere and liquidating that for what it is that you're doing. What if you could have the best of both worlds no matter where you're at? So banking is the permeating paradigm into all of that activity, no matter which quadrant you're in.
Banking is always happening. You should get into the game, as well as, like Nelson would have said, get into the game of what you do to make your living as well. But maybe you want to now figure out what quadrant you're in. Here's someone that is going to figure that out very soon. It's time for our Fan Follow of the Week. Ladies and gentlemen, we have got somebody out there on YouTube. Remember, you can hit us up on our YouTube channel. Look for us, the Banking Bros at the Cash Compound. Those two terms will get you there in most places. And Jesse, why don't you tell us who we got out there as our Fan Follow of the Week on YouTube?
Emprendedoras Latinas. Is the handle.
That on purpose. You realize, right?
As soon as I saw the first name, I was like, okay, I'm even sounding that out because that's a lot of syllables, Spanish or English.
There we go. So Jesse was a secondary Spanish teacher at one time in his life. We're going to bring that back soon and help our Latin population and our Spanish speakers get in the game with their own banking. But emprendedoras, thank you so much for following along what we've got going here on our channel. Make sure you find us, ladies and gentlemen, on all of our handles, on our greatest platforms out there, including Instagram at The Banking Bros, TikTok at The Banking Bros or The Cash Compound, or right here on YouTube. Thank you for listening and checking in on all your favorite podcast platforms as well. So, Jesse, as we move into what became my favorite section of the book, talking about the level of investor, the aptitude for getting into the game on the right side, understanding who you are is what Kiyosaki tries to help us do. He does not say any of these are better or worse than the others,
right?
Which is I thought was very interesting because I want to say, oh, it must be better on the right side. But he said you got to understand who you are, and there's several different ways to go about that. So on the right side of the quadrant, looking to get our money working for us, let's talk about that different style and type and categories of investor.
Okay. So there are 5 different levels, he says, 5 different levels. Level 1 is the zero financial intelligence level. So again, I would commend you just for listening to this type of information or reading Kiyosaki's books. You're in the game. That's fantastic. 2 is the savers are losers, and that's such a controversial saying that he has. He still repeats it.
He tries to make a point on that, and I think the inflation of the last couple of years has really even helped people understand another generation or another segment of the population understand that if you're saving money, they're going down in value. They're not bringing you anything that money does if you just let them sit.
Yes, absolutely. That's his second level. And then he moves on 3, 4, and 5. So 3 is the I'm too busy level. So people are they're crushing it perhaps in their space and what they're doing, but they're really tied up in it. And they're saying, well, okay, I'm just going to hand over all this profit, all this capital that I have collected or that I have amassed, and they know what they're doing. So it's a real set it and forget it mentality.
I'm going to give up my control or my authority over that and abdicate my responsibility and let somebody else who should be smarter than me or better at it take care of things for my future. Now, what is your take on that person's choice?
Number one, it just inherently comes with a lot of risk.
It really does. And unfortunately, we probably all know people who have taken that risk and not won.
Yep. I'm on the phone too often with people saying, I saw what I had in this account or this program or this plan. I saw it cut in half here recently. It's like, that's a hard conversation to have with people.
Very tough, especially because normally at that point in their life, they are at the point where they may have stopped working.
They're counting on
retirement space. They were counting on it. Yeah, that's the point. They're realizing my plans are going to have to change because I don't have what I thought I would.
Yeah.
Okay, what's our next level?
Fourth one is I'm a professional. So you're not abdicating that to someone else, that potential of growth and compounding. So I'm the professional now. I'm the one holding the reins. I'm in the driver's seat. And that's a quantum leap, to be sure. And then the last is the capitalist level. So being a true capitalist in what you're doing.
Now, explain what that means, though. I think there are a lot of people who hear that a lot, and maybe in the political realm, they don't understand. That means something different. So what do we need to understand about what does capitalist mean here?
So not only are you level 4 where you are the professional, but quite possibly you're working with other capitalists. So you're working with other people that are profitable and exceptional in what it is that they do. So this idea of a round table or this idea of a council of mentors or collaborators can be a really big part of that.
When I think of it, I think of people who are creating opportunity. Okay. That's what capitalism is. You create an opportunity. So what we're looking at here is we see money as something that should be placed in spaces that create something. So that wouldn't be just a saver. Yeah, profit, right? So we want to put it to work. And so that for me was a tough thing to probably understand back when I was first introduced to Kiyosaki and the other book, because I was a saver. I thought that's how you won. You worked harder, you leveled up on the left side of the quadrant by getting a great job or one day being a specialist, and you saved your way to wealth. And when Robert kept saying, early in the game, I mean, 2007 is when he got on the New York Times bestseller list and went on Oprah with his book. And I knew about him shortly after that. Maybe I was watching Oprah at that time, but I didn't read the book right then. But if I'm thinking right, no, 97. I'm sorry. He was 97, I think, is when he was on the show. 2007, somewhere around there is when I
saying
read
things
the book
like your house is not an asset.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm lost because that's what I had been told by other financial gurus, entertainers, or personalities. And I'm thinking, savers or losers, what? I don't even understand what else I would do. See, I didn't even understand the right side of the quadrant at all. So appreciate that, man. So do you recommend this work and this book to people, and who should read it? Who's looking for it, Jesse?
I do, and I will recommend it in the way that Robert Kiyosaki wrote it. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is, he says, his first book, and it's a good sequence. It really is. This one, the second one, the Cashflow Quadrants, I highly recommend it. It really did strike me in a big way, but I did like that I read these books in sequence. And then there's a third one. It's Rich Dad's Guide to Investing. So he did write those 3 books in that particular order. I suggest you read all 3 of them for sure, and in that order.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you do. And we want to remind you to go to our website, thebankingbros.com. That's one of our websites at the Cash Compound to help you understand where our events are. So thebankingbros.com/events to see where we're speaking and getting into the nitty-gritty on how you can get in the game. Not just the theory or books and recommending things from other people, but we do want to help you personally crack the code to cash flow.
That's right.
And get in the game of what we call the save and spend system or the infinite banking concept. We'd love for you to join us online virtually and in person in a town near you very soon. Well, Jesse, thanks for being on the podcast today, man. We're going to go out there and change some lives, and everything is the same about us except for who we meet, associate with, and the books we read.
Keep learning, people.